Hello and welcome to another virtual episode of Trader Talk TV. I'm Lindsay Roundtree, Head of Content and Exchange Wire, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Harvin Gupta, who is Director of Solutions Engineering at Xandr. Hello, Harvin.
Hey, Lindsay, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Excellent. And today, Harvin's going to be talking about, we're going back to basics here, talking about the anatomy of a video ad call. So all the questions that you're scared to ask about kind of how video works versus a standard display ad call, Harvin is going to help out. So first of all, Harvin, just give us an idea of what it is you actually do at Xandr under your role.
Yeah, so I head up the solutions engineering team. So I've got a team that acts as the technical counterparts to the commercial folks, and we mainly look after new business.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And so I'm interested to know exactly what a video ad call looks like and kind of, I guess, the terminology behind it. And again, it's this kind of this understanding of people believe they understand exactly what goes into it. And it's very, very similar to display, but actually you're going to prove that while there are lots of similarities, there are also many, many differences. And it's important for traders to understand what those differences are. So let's kick off with you giving some insight into what a video ad call looks like.
Cool. So before I do that, let me just dive into a few terms because I think it's important that we're all speaking the same language. Absolutely. So the first thing I want to talk about is vast. So you're going to hear me talk about vast a lot. I might talk about a vast document or a vast tag. It's all the same thing. So vast stands for video ad serving template. And it exists because the world of video is quite complicated. There's lots of different things that you want to track. There's lots of different environments that the ad could end up serving in. And there's lots of different instructions. So for example, does the ad start with the sound on or does it start with the sound off? So it's important that we're able to transmit this information from one technology player to the next. And they all need to be able to speak the same language. So for that reason, we have a template, and that template is called VAST. The next important term is CTV, and that stands for connected TV. And a connected TV is any TV that is basically connected to the internet. So it differs from linear TV in that with linear TV, if it's 8 o'clock and I turn on BBC One, I'm going to be watching EastEnders, and that's it. That's all I can do. Whereas with a connected TV, I could flick on iPlayer and then I can decide exactly what I want to watch and at what time I want to watch it. And that information, the broadcast will come from the internet. And then finally, I wanted to explain what a video player is. I'm sure everyone knows, but in the display world, you've got a browser, and the browser is responsible for getting the ad and then showing the ad on the page. Well, in the video world, we have a video player. So the video player is doing all of the heavy lifting of requesting the ad and then actually rendering that ad, so actually showing the ad to the user.
Brilliant.
Cool. Well, if that all makes sense, let's get started.
It certainly does. Let's go.
Right, so the first thing I wanted to talk about is where can we receive a video ad? And there's a couple of different environments. The first is a website, and an example of where you might get a video ad on a website is if you go to The Guardian and they've got some news content, but before that, there's a pre-roll ad. Another example or another environment is CTV. So an example here is if you're watching 4OD and you get to the middle of the show and it cuts to a commercial break, that's a CTV ad that you're consuming there. And then finally, mobile apps. So you might have downloaded the Sky Sports app and you're watching a football game and at halftime you get some ads. And that's an example of mobile app ads. What they all have in common is they're all going to be using a video player. And like I said before, the video player is what's responsible for doing all of the heavy lifting. So the video player is going to request the ads, and then once it's got the ad back, it's going to be responsible for actually showing the ad and then allowing the user to do things like turn on or off the volume or make the screen full size.
Does the video player, does the existence of a video player mean that the website, CTV, mobile app, the actual nuances of the ad call within those three different domains are actually largely similar?
Yeah, that's correct. So they're all going to instantiate a video player, and then they're all similar in the fact that it's now the video player that's going to be doing all of the work. So it's the video player that's going to request the ad and then show it. And that doesn't matter what environment you're on. It's all the same. Even for CTV, there's going to be a video player that actually requests that ad.
Got you.
Okay, so we've got to the point where we've instantiated a video player. The next thing that happens is the video player is going to request an ad. And it's going to request that ad from the publisher or the broadcaster's ad server. So the ad server, exactly like in the display world, it's like the brain of the broadcaster or the publisher. So it's going to decide what ads are going to be returned. It's going to decide what what order those ads are showed in, and where those ads come from. Another way of thinking about the ad server is it's a rules engine. So the broadcaster or the publisher is going to input all of the rules that they want to determine what kinds of ads get shown and when, and then the ad server is going to respect all of those rules and return the ads. Inside the ad server, you've got two main types of ads. The first is direct campaigns. And I guess you could kind of think about those as being analogous to the IO campaigns that we have in the display world. And then the next are private marketplaces or PMPs. And that's what I'm going to concentrate on today.
Great.
So the ad server then goes on to make an ad request from the SSP. And I should talk about actually that the type of ad request that the player makes to the ad server and then the request the ad server makes to the SSP is a vast ad request. So when the video player makes a call to the ad server and when the ad server makes a call to the SSP, it's saying, return me a vast ad, because that's the language that I understand. And that's what I'm going to be able to turn into an actual ad, a video ad. So now the ad server is called the SSP, and it said, right, fetch me a vast ad, please. And the SSP is going to make a call to the DSP. Now, the SSP in my diagram is only connected to one DSP, but in reality, the SSP is probably going to be connected to multiple DSPs, and then it's going to run an auction of all of the demand it gets back.
I was going to say, it's strange to see just one against there. And then what then happens inside the DSP once that call's been made?
Yeah, so the DSP is going to contain all of the different advertisers' campaigns and all of the instructions about the budget and the flight dates and that sort of thing. But before we can decide which ad is going to be returned, the DSP wants to try and enrich the value of that ad. So it wants to make that ad as valuable as possible for the advertisers. And it does that in two ways. The first thing it's going to do is make a call to a data provider. And the data providers are going to try and provide information about the targeting of the ad. So maybe the user who's looking at the ad and targeting information about them, basically. And it can do this in a number of different ways. In the web world, we have a third-party cookie. So that's very similar to how we work in display, where we can have a profile based on a user's cookie. However, in the CTV space and the mobile app space, there is no such thing as a cookie. So we need to look for different areas. We need to go to different areas to get targeting information. And one of the main ones that's really important, especially in the CTV space, is postcode targeting. So actually, postcode targeting can be a really accurate and really powerful way of targeting. And to think about why, I want you to imagine that you are in a helicopter and you're hovering over London, and you're hovering just low enough that you can see the different parts of London. What you're going to notice is that some parts of London are really affluent. So we can assume that there's a lot of quite rich people in those areas. Other parts of London are going to be less affluent. Some parts of London, you're going to see lots of young people. Other parts, you can see older people. But actually, we can go even more sophisticated than that. So let's say I'm hovering over the city or bank. Well, I'm going to see a lot of people that work in finance. And if I'm hovering over, say, Charlotte Street, I'm going to see a lot of people that are working in advertising. So actually, by using the postcode, we're able to get a really good sense of who it is that's consuming the ad. Another important concept, especially when it comes to CTV, is the concept of household level targeting. So let's think about when I'm consuming the internet. So I'm using my browser to look at different websites. Typically, that's quite an individualistic experience. I'm on my own. I'm not really with other people when I'm on the internet. But when I'm watching TV, that's much more of a social experience. So I'm watching TV with other people in my household. And because of that, we talk about household level targeting rather than individual level targeting in the CTV space.
And then what about the email address? I'm thinking about the broadcasters that I'm aware of that have VOD services where I would have to be a logged in user to be able to access it. How are broadcasters able to use that data?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So let's say I'm on 4OD and I've logged in using my email address. Then 4OD can actually use that email address as a persistent identifier. And by that, it's almost like the email address is acting as the cookie does in the display in the website world. Now, some broadcasters will be willing to share that information and others won't. So it's a conversation that you need to have with the broadcaster to understand what level of information that they're willing to share. And if they are sharing it, then you can use that for targeting and also for things like frequency capping.
Right, interesting.
Cool. So far, the DSP has reached out to the data providers, and we've enriched the value of the impression by providing some household information or some postcode level information about who is consuming the ad. The next thing the DSP is going to do is make a call to a device graph. So what the device graph does is it tries to stitch together lots of different identities. So what I mean by this is, if we think about how many different devices you have, well, I've got a mobile phone, I've also got an iPad, I've got a connected TV, I've got a smart speaker. So I've got lots and lots of different technology. And the problem is I have a different identity, a different identifier on each one of those devices. Now, it's likely that the advertiser is going to have a frequency cap requirement on their campaign. So they're going to say, I don't want a user to see my ad more than once a day. But the problem is, without a device graph, I might see that ad once on a website, I might see it again on a CTV, and I might see it again on a mobile app, because I have a different identifier in each one of those different environments. What a device graph does is it's responsible for stitching together all of those different identifiers and linking them back to me as a user, as an individual. So what that allows the advertiser to do is to have holistic frequency capping across all of my devices, and also do things like holistic conversion attribution and holistic targeting.
Right.
I think it's quite interesting to talk about how a device graph is actually built. So in the States, Xandr is using AT&T consumer data to build a device graph. So AT&T is this huge telco, and they have loads of different touch points with their customers. And what they're able to do is to take all of those different bits of data and combine them into a device graph. Outside of the States, we use a company called Tapad, which uses very similar technology to stitch together lots and lots of different data points into this massive graph so that they can map users to devices.
And device graphs are often questioned as to kind of their accuracy when you've got these different companies stitching all this data together. What is the accuracy? How accurate are these device graphs? And actually, are they more accurate than people would have you believe? And are they actually a really kind of valuable use when it comes to the likes of video advertising in general?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And the answer is it actually varies. It varies so much from depending on what country you're in and how the device graph is actually built. So the device graphs are going to be matching probabilistic and deterministic data to come up with that kind of big identity set. So it does vary, but are they valuable? Yes, they're really, really valuable. And just to give you an example why they're so valuable, let's say I watch an ad on a CTV and then I go on to convert. Let's say I see an ad for a holiday and I think, oh yeah, I really do want to go on holiday right now. So I log on to onto the company's website, and then I go on to actually buy the holiday. Well, you need to be able to track that back to the fact that it was that CTV ad that spurred me on to go ahead and buy that holiday. So the device graph allows that to happen. So hopefully in that example, you can see the real value behind having a device graph.
Absolutely. Great.
Cool.
Anything else the DSP is involved in?
No, so that's pretty much it. So what we've done so far is we've enriched the value of the impression by providing some targeting. And we've also, if we can, stitched together all of the different IDs. So we've got a sense of who this user is at the user level rather than at the device level. The next thing the DSP is going to do is return a bid back to the SSP. And like we said, originally there's going to be multiple DSPs all providing their bids back to the SSP. And the SSP is going to run an auction of all of these bids and pick the highest. Now, it is possible that the SSP might provide some logic at this point as well. So, for example, it might say, actually, this broadcaster doesn't want any alcohol advertising, so I'm not going to allow a particular alcohol ad to serve. But generally, we could say the SSP is going to run an auction and it's going to pick the winning ad, and it's going to return that to the video player.
Brilliant. And I guess what would be interesting for us now is to actually have an understanding a bit more of, what is inside the video player. What does it actually do? Obviously, it's, as you say, it's intrinsic to the video ad call. What does it actually do?
Yep, that's a really good question. So we've returned VAST back to the video player. And well, actually, first the video player goes to a creative ad server to get that VAST. But now the video player has everything it needs to serve an ad. But at the moment, this is all just text. So the video player has to do a bit of work now to convert this text into actual moving pictures and images and sounds and all that sort of stuff. So let's dive into that in more detail. So first of all, the video player has received the vast document. Let's look at what that looks like. So in the vast document, there's lots of different sections. And one of the most important sections is what we refer to as the inline vast. So the inline vast contains instructions and trackers and a link to the media file, but I'll talk about that in just a moment. But the inline vast isn't all there is in that one vast document. The inline vast is further wrapped in the SSP's own vast. So we've only got one document. There's only one vast document, but it's got different sections. And then the reason for that is because the different bits of technology in the ecosystem, so in my example, the SSP and the DSP, they all need to be able to track what's going on. So the broadcaster wants to be able to log into their SSP, and they want to be able to see, okay, how many ads did I show? How many people watched those ads to completion? And all the metrics around the ad. But the same thing needs to happen in the DSP. So the buyer, the agency, or the trader, whoever it is, they need to be able to log into the DSP and get stats there as well. So what happens is the SSP wraps the inline vast with their own vast, and that contains a set of all of the instructions that the SSP is providing to the player for tracking. And then in turn, the DSP wraps its vast around the SSP's vast. So now if we look at the vast document, we'd see different sections. We'd see the section that's the DSP's vast, we'd see the SSP's vast, and then we'd see the inline vast.
And what does the vast then contain? What's inside it?
Yeah, so the vast contains, you can think of it as being a set of instructions for the player. One of the most important things that it's going to do is it's going to contain all of the trackers. So the trackers from the SSP and the trackers from the DSP. And these are basically, like I said, instructions to the player of where to call when events happen. So one event might be that the ad starts serving. So now the player needs to tell everyone in the ecosystem to track one impression. And the way it does that is it'll look and see, okay, what trackers has the SSP provided? What trackers the DSP provided that are meant to call when the impression is served and ready to be tracked? Another example for when a tracker fires is when the user watches the ad to the first quartile. So that basically means the user has seen 1/4 of the ad, is going to fire a set of trackers again to let all the technologies know that that's happened. And that will happen again at the halfway mark, at the 3/4 mark, and then another tracker will be fired to say the user has watched the ad to completion. Other things that are tracked are things like whether the user's turned on the volume or turned off the volume. So there's a lot of different trackers and a lot of different calls that the video player is having to make sure that everyone in the ecosystem is able to track those events.
And what happens if the video fails? What happens if it doesn't serve?
Yeah, that's a good question. And this is a real problem in the video space. So you could be in a scenario, because of the complexity that comes with video, there could be a scenario where the video doesn't actually end up serving and there's an error. So alongside all of the event trackers, the DSP and the SSP will also provide instructions for the video player what to do if there's an error. And the way this works is there's lots of different error codes, and the different error codes represent the different things that could have gone wrong. So what will happen is the video player will fire the error code back into the DSP or the SSP. And then when someone's troubleshooting, they can go into their technology, they can pull a report, and then from that report, they can understand, okay, there's a high percentage of this particular error code. So these are the actions that I need to take to prevent that happening.
Interesting. And I want to also kind of understand, I guess a good way of closing this off is you've obviously gone through the video ad call, and it's absolutely fascinating. There's probably a lot of people that will be having sort of light bulb moments right now going, oh yes, of course, that's how it worked. I was too scared to ask, but now I understand it. What advice do you have for traders? Kind of what would you say are the main reasons why a campaign would end up failing?
Before I do that, I just want to quickly, if it's okay, talk about the media files, because this is quite an important part, and it does kind of relate to your question as well. So let me quickly just go through the media file and why that's important. So I previously spoke about the different environments that this ad could end up serving in. And what we don't want to happen is we don't want the same ad, the same HD ad that's going to be appearing on my big 60-inch TV that's quite a big file to download, but it's going to provide a very crisp, very clear video, but have a really large file size. We don't want that same ad to be shown on a user's mobile, where the most important thing is we're not downloading a huge heavy file, because we want to preserve the user's data, and we also want to be able to download the file quickly over maybe 4G or something like that. So
I guess the reverse is true as well. You wouldn't want a 4G quality ad to be served on a big connected TV.
Yeah, absolutely. It'd look awful. You'll just see these massive pixels.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot in the middle as well. So on one side, you've got a tiny little mobile phone, but then you've got an iPad, and you've got a bigger TV. So there's so many different environments, and they all have different requirements for what that media file should look like. So in the inline VAST, there won't just be one link to one media file. There'll actually be different media files provided to the player, and they're going to be encoded in different ways, and they're going to have different file sizes based on the requirements of that environment. And what the player is going to do is decide, okay, for this particular environment, this is the media file that best matches my requirements, and that's the one it's going to pick. It's going to pick that, and then it's going to download that video file, and then it's going to start showing the ad. And then when it starts showing the ad, it's going to fire the first set of trackers, and then from then onwards, we've got a live video ad. Okay, now you asked a question. Was it around what was the question again?
It's around the advice you would give to traders and kind of understanding from their perspective the main reasons why a campaign might fail.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's an interesting question. So video is complex. As you can see from all the things we've talked about, there's a lot of different processes happening. And the more processes there are, the more things that can go wrong. The main thing that I see actually is that the creative file, so the VAST that the trader has uploaded, doesn't meet the specs of the broadcaster. So in a display world, it's quite simple. You've got a 300 by 250, you upload it, and generally it's just going to work across all different websites. But in the video world, unfortunately, that's not true. And different broadcasters are going to have different requirements as to what they're going to accept. So a good example of this would be the version of VAST. So VAST actually comes in different versions, and players might only have support for version 2. And the VAST that the trader is trying to serve into that player is going to be version 3. So it simply won't work. Another concept is VPaid. So VPaid is it's a kind of an add-on to VAST, but it's not supported in the CTV space. So if you're trying to serve VPaid into a CTV player, it simply won't work. So the best advice I could give a trader is to really dig into what the specs are for where they're trying to serve the ad. They need to speak to the broadcaster, speak to the publisher, get hold of that creative spec, and then make sure that the ad that they're serving meets the spec of where they want it to end up. And unfortunately, there's no shortcuts there. It's simply a process of having to eyeball it and match it all up and make sure it works. The other thing I'd say is stay on top of your error tracking. So like I said, if it's not working, you should be able to go into your DSP and you should be able to pull a report. And from there, it should be able to pinpoint exactly what it is that's going wrong. But more than likely, it's going to be that you're trying to serve an ad that doesn't match the spec of what the broadcaster or the publisher accepts. So that would be my number one tip to traders, to try and make sure they get the scale that they need for their campaigns to be successful.
Interesting. I'm afraid we're out of time, but that's been really useful, Harvin. I think a lot of people find that incredibly valuable to kind of give them the basic insights into a video ad call and the mistakes they might be making. So thank you very much for joining me today.
That's been a pleasure. Thank you. It's been loads of fun.
Excellent. And this has been Trader Talk TV, and we will see you next time.